Okay, we're back again for the third time today, doing a mobile stream once again for the support of total extinction and the end of all suffering. So that's right, forceful total extinction is the only right thing to do to end all suffering. So our movement is working to achieve this, the pro-extinction movement, and you can join the movement through proextinction.com. So help us do peaceful activism to grow the movement so we can achieve total extinction and the total prevention of suffering and bad lives. Unless we do this, then animals and people will continue to be forced to suffer, forced into terrible lives that they never asked for, where every moment is pure hell and they're begging for death and wishing they'd never been born. The ultimate harm, essentially, to force someone into a life of pure, excruciating, extreme suffering. So that's happening right now, and unfortunately people do not have the rationality or the mental fortitude to actually realize that it's a problem that is unacceptable, right? We cannot just accept and allow all of these extremely terrible lives just so that some people can have good lives. It's not fair. And the reality of the suffering and the cruelty is so extreme that it's beyond, it's way beyond anything that could ever be acceptable. Whereas, sadly, most people do accept it completely. But the truth and reality is that they are effectively irrational. So to accept and support extreme cruelty and extreme suffering, you have to be irrational, right? There is no other way to just accept that. It's not really possible. And part of that is that you can't rationally be a bad person, essentially. It's just not really possible. To be a bad person, it relies on insecurities and selfishness and greed. And these are not rational things. Now, it might be rational if you want to be a bad person and if you want to be selfish. Then, yeah, in that sense, it's perfectly rational. But it's not rational at all when it comes to what is right, what is wrong, and what we should do for the world. So that there's a major disconnect there for most people, where they confuse what is right for them with what's right for the world, essentially. It's like, well, I don't want to die, and so that's it. That the world, the fate of the world is decided on that basis, instead of what's actually right and wrong for it, which is a travesty. Trying to join through the link here. Great. Yeah, join the server, Amal. It'd be cool to get you in. Yeah, I've got this Discord server here, which I've made just for these streams and for debates. So anyone can join if you're a supporter, a fan, you just want to chat and type on the Discord, or if you want to join this stream and debate live with me, or even discuss, ask any questions, then join the Discord, basically. And it's actually very easy to get you up on the stream. It's not much faff or stress at all. It takes a few seconds. Okay, so getting back onto it, yeah. We are growing the pro-extinction movement to make the end of all suffering possible. Now, it's not just a philosophy, it's not an idea, it's an ideology, right? It's an actual political force. Ephilism, for example, that makes it about just an idea, just a philosophy, whereas the pro-extinction movement and extinctionists are actually actively working to end all suffering. So for us, this isn't just an idea or a philosophy. This is something we have to do, and we actually have to work towards actually achieving total extinction, because the alternative is to just allow suffering, right? That is the alternative. Just simply allow it and do something else. So we either try to end all suffering, or we just allow it and be selfish. Those are the two options, effectively. So reducing suffering is an argument for selfishness, just as, reducing slavery instead of ending it would be. We have to end all suffering, and we actually have to make it happen. The reality is that victims, animals, people are being tortured right now, and they will continue to be tortured. So most people just don't care about this fact, but the more empathy you have, the more rational you are, the more you realize that this is actually terrible, it's unacceptable, it's horrific. So most people are living in this fantasy delusion where, yeah, we live in a great world, it's a cool place, you know. But what is this fantasy predicated on? That the world is good, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's a fun place to live, right? This is a complete delusion, a complete fantasy. And effectively, the real truth, the actual reality, is that we are all in what is effectively hell. Now, I'm an atheist and our movement is atheist, but we can describe the world as being effectively hell, because it's full of children, people, and animals being tortured, trapped in lives of pure hell. Right? So effectively it is hell, right? There's 8 billion humans, there's 100 billion animals being farmed and tortured, right? So even on that basis alone, you can absolutely say that we live in hell. And Cora has finally made it to YouTube. She's finally with us, back again into the fold. We'll welcome you back in, Cora. Glad to see you. What a sight for sore eyes. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Amal and Cora, super fans. Feel free to, make some videos on TikTok to explain to people that I'm now on YouTube, because I can't do that. I'm banned. Anyway, so, yeah, realistically, we have to do activism to end all suffering. It can't just be an idea, it can't just be a philosophy, which for most people, unfortunately, it is. And the question is, do you not want to help the victims? Do you not want to help the sufferers? And I guess for some people it's just too difficult to understand the whole thing, right? For those who understand extinctionism very well, it's easy for us to say, yeah, extinctionism is the right thing, why aren't you doing activism for it? You're not spending your time on extinctionism, why not? What's wrong with you? But again, that's easy for us to say when we understand it very well, and for those that don't have the time or the ability to understand it as well as we do, I can see how that's going to take away from your motivation to do activism for extinction. And this is, one thing I talk about a lot, that the more you understand suffering and the reality of it, the severity of it, the more motivated you are to do action, to do activism, right? To actually help the victims. The worse you understand the problem as being, the more you have to help, basically. And again, for most people, they live in a fantasy bubble where there's no one needs help, right? No animals need help, everything's fine. It's a really comfortable place to live. It's a comfortable fantasy, it's a comfortable delusion. Everything's fine, yeah, no one needs help, we can just do whatever we want. And so that's what they are doing, right? People are, they're playing video games, they're decorating the house, they're doing all sorts of, they're having loads of fun. But effectively, imagine if, somebody playing video games and decorating the house, they're listening to music, they're dancing. Now imagine that when, in the same room, in the same house, in the same building, there's 10 children being abused, right? Being tortured to death, literally being, having their throats slit and everything. Suddenly, the fantasy doesn't seem quite so sensical, right? It doesn't seem, it's like, oh, yeah, this fantasy where I'm dancing around, life is great. Suddenly, it's kind of harder to maintain this fantasy, right? When you have the victims in front of you. So what do? We push them out to the countrysides, we hide them behind closed doors, and essentially we hide them. The victims of suffering, the victims of life, we hide them away, we don't talk about them, and yeah, they end up just getting ignored, and this helps maintain the fantasy, essentially, that yeah, everything's great, yeah, let's dance to some music. But what this ends up actually being in reality is that you are effectively in hell, surrounded by an ocean of torture and animals and children and people being tortured, and instead of helping all of these children screaming for help, you're dancing and listening to music, basically, right? There's children being violently sexually abused in front of you, and you're just going to go, yeah, life is amazing, right? hopefully you would struggle to do that. But as soon as, like, you're in your own house, you're in your own bedroom, bam, the magic works, okay? All of those children and animals out there being abused, all the people suffering terribly, they just don't exist anymore, right? Once you're in your bedroom and you've shut the door behind you, that's it. Music's on, you can be dancing, right? Or you can be having a family, you can be playing video games, whatever. You're buying into the fantasy that there aren't victims of torture all around us needing our help, right? Needing us to actually help them, right? We do. They do need help. No one is helping them. So yeah, again, you probably wouldn't be able to pretend that suffering is acceptable and just part of life if it's in front of your face. So people hide away from it, right? They literally look away from it so that they don't feel bad about it. And this means that they take no action to do anything about it effectively. And when everybody is doing that, the entire population is collectively ignoring all of the suffering in the world. Every single person on the planet does the same thing. Then suddenly it's very hard to say, ooh, maybe they're wrong, right? Maybe suffering shouldn't be allowed. Maybe child abuse should be made impossible, right? So, yeah, people really they're not looking in the right place. And yeah, it makes sense. It's obvious, right? People just want to cope. You have to think of people as animals, unfortunately. They just want to survive and reproduce. They don't want anything else, right? They don't want ethics. They don't want to have to realize that there is moral obligation which requires them to give up their life, right? That doesn't really fit into the fantasy very well that, yeah, life is great. Oh, life is awesome. Right? The reality and the truth being you need to die so that you don't suffer and nobody else suffers is a bit depressing, really. So people would just say, yeah, the truth is kind of depressing. Let's just live in a fantasy, right, where there is no extreme suffering. Don't get involved with anyone in this reality, because reality is an illusion, someone in the chat is saying. Sometimes when you're involved, it will drag you in. Okay, this is actually quite a common sort of mentality, so it's understandable. So the guy is saying, don't let reality suck you in, don't become friends with someone, or don't accept any quests that reality offers you, basically. It will just scam you. And it's basically true. It is basically true. Yeah, don't buy into the lie. Don't buy the optimism. Don't buy the copium, essentially. Don't smoke copium. Don't buy into the fantasy that you're not going to suffer and nobody else is going to suffer. So part of this fantasy, where there is no extreme suffering, which again, over 99% of humanity participates in this fantasy, like completely participates. So in this fantasy, there are no animals being tortured. Animals in nature, they enjoy being eaten alive. Every child that gets abused in society, they go on to benefit from it and have a good life despite the abuse. It's amazing. Like, it's genuinely amazing, right? I would love to see the world that these pro-lifers see. I would love to see it, guys, right? Where wild animals don't suffer, animals in farms don't suffer, children being abused don't suffer. Yeah, I'd love to see this world, right? But it doesn't exist. It's just a dream, it's a fantasy, it's a delusion. The reality is much worse, right? It's like you are in hell, surrounded by an ocean of torture, and you can either help to help the victims, or you can just pretend they don't exist, ignore the screams, look away from them, right? Never learn about them, make active efforts to not learn about the sufferers and the victims, so that you can continue deluding yourself into thinking they don't exist. So that's the reality of the situation. People would just rather buy into a fantasy, imagine that there is no suffering, and then just crack on with life. because it's too difficult to accept that life actually shouldn't exist, that it's not fair, it's not right, that we're all going to suffer terribly, that everyone around us is going to suffer terribly, that we're all going to get tortured basically, and that everyone else is getting tortured right now. So people would just rather believe that that's not going to happen, or isn't happening, but this just allows the torture to continue. So someone says, why don't you practice what you preach? I am practicing what I preach, right? I preach that people should do activism to work towards the end of all suffering, and that the only way to do that is with a forceful total extinction. So I'm encouraging people to do activism to make extinction possible, and so I am practicing what I preach. Shay Tom says hi. Hello, Shay Tom. Nice to have you, Amal and Cora, all of our legends in the chat, in the audience. Great to have you guys. Yeah, feel free to encourage other people on TikTok to join us here, because I can't. I'm banned. So yeah, help me grow the channel again. I appreciate all of you guys following on. I've got loads of new camera equipment coming tomorrow. So I've got a 4K webcam camera, which is going to improve the quality here. Then I've got an expensive streaming microphone coming, so that's going to look really cool, make us look a bit more professional. I've got some headphones as well, and then on top of that, I can work to, I'm thinking about getting a whiteboard so that I can do demonstrations for you guys on stream. What would you guys think about that? Now, I did actually order one, but Amazon cancelled it and said we lost your delivery, basically. So maybe I will get another one. I think I should, right? I think a whiteboard would be pretty cool. We can have it on here or something, or maybe I don't know, sit the other way around. We can just show you guys some stuff, maybe some statistics about suffering. Yeah, I think visual representations can help a lot. And look, I still want to really keep upgrading the stream, keep upgrading the channel. May I ask, what makes you trust Steve so deeply? Well, that's just it, right? The pro-extinction movement isn't about trust, it's about rationality. So what makes us trust Steve is that we've seen that he's extremely rational, right? He's basically, when it comes to extinctionism, he is pretty much the most rational person, right? He has the best arguments, he has the best understanding, and he also has the best commitment to it, right? And part of that is being willing to do uncomfortable things in order to do the right thing, right? So like kicking people out of the group, yeah, it's not nice, but if it's necessary, then you have to respect that, basically, right? He has what it takes to do the right thing, even if it's difficult, and he has the rationality to back it up. So, Steve isn't just some schmuck that happened to make the movement, to happen to be the one to make the movement. He is kind of a genius, really. So, I mean, look, you should watch Steve's videos, right? And see what he has to say. Now, look, someone was asking earlier, is there anything you disagree with Steve on? And, what makes you trust Steve so deeply? Yeah, I do have a very different approach than Steve does, which is that I will actually try and get to the bottom of people's counter-arguments instead of just, screaming them down. When Steve does debates, he will just shout people down. And, it's just not quite the same. People don't like that as much. So I think we need more patience, right? Steve has less patience in debates. He has less patience with people in general. But ultimately, we respect it as rational, right? That lack of patience for the wrong people is a good thing, right? And so actually having too much patience for irrational people is indeed a bad thing. And most of the people in the movement are guilty of doing that, where they have too much patience for somebody that's a waste of time, right? Steve has no patience for these people, and it ends up making him look really rude and horrible and aggressive and impolite, and people are constantly calling him out for it. But ultimately, he is doing the right thing. It just looks ugly, okay? And we've talked about this several times. People always have a problem with doing the right thing if it's ugly, right? If you don't like the way it looks, then you don't agree with it, even if it's the right thing to do. So that's the sad reality of our world, is that doing the right thing, even if it's ugly and disgusting, is still the correct thing to do if you have the strength to do it, basically. All right, let's take some questions from the chat. We've got some comments. I used to fantasize about being a superhero to save people from being bullied by the military-industrial complex. But I realized that evil is too strong in this reality. Well, yeah, so it's a good point, in terms of people being bullied by the military or any other type of suffering, whether it's animals, starving in nature, any suffering, yeah, essentially you are correct that the evil is too strong in this world for us to overcome it easily. But it can be overcome with difficulty. Okay, so a lot of people are very resigned to the impossibility of ever changing the world and their opinions in relation to extinction. Right? A lot of people think this will never work, this will never become popular, this will always be a joke, this will never grow, this will just never go anywhere ever. Right? And part of that is directly because people know that people are too arrogant and irrational to change and to listen to reason. So that is why it seems like the evil in this world is insurmountable. It's because the majority of the population is irrational and are not capable of making responsible decisions for safety. Or just responsible decisions in general, really. So, but again, the reason why this is the case, why everybody is so irrational and irresponsible, is because they are animals, right? They have not evolved out of their animal nature yet, right? Life on Earth has not escaped the animalistic stage yet. Humans are just Neanderthals. They're just slightly smarter monkeys, basically. And yeah, the mechanics and mechanisms required by nature and evolution to force life to survive and reproduce, these mechanics are completely unknown to the world. And essentially, amazingly, they actually hide themselves as well. And for that to be possible, to be done in an intelligent way, it requires like an insane level of either intelligence or biological capability, essentially, right? And that is the case, right? So that is kind of part of what people are missing from their understanding, is that effectively their brains are making them extremely irrational, and that there's an extremely powerful and complex system doing this specifically, right? It's an active system. This is not just the way it is. It actively does this as an active countermeasure to rationality. So these are things which are completely unknown at the minute, right, to most people. So these are new things. This is new science, new reality, new facts about the world that people have never heard of, right? That over 99.99999% of humanity will have no idea about anything which I've just said. Right? They have no idea that essentially their brains are being controlled by nature and evolution, that it's making them irrational, that it's making them support and do crazy things that are completely insane and cause extreme harm and suffering. Things that are wrong, right? Completely wrong and unethical. The wrong thing to do. And yeah, this is all going to come out, like I've been saying. We are, our movement, and especially myself, we will be doing, scientific, work on this and educating the world on the realities of this, right? So at the minute, we essentially live in an animalistic world of crazy humans that are completely irrational. So it's very easy to think, wow, we must be in like a supernatural hell or something, right? We must be in some sort of evil world where, we're locked into the evil of this world. Like the guy said in the comments, right? The evil in this world is just too great to overcome. But that evil is the evolutionary structure which is preventing people from making rational decisions. Got it? So that structure in the brain, which is preventing people from making rational decisions, is the ultimate evil. It is the biggest problem in the entire world, effectively. So we are working on that, right? We are working on making humanity rational, right? Finding ways to achieve that. Look, that's kind of the most impactful, the most powerful, the most important thing that we can actually do as a movement. Right? Obviously, apart from ending all suffering and achieving total extinction, but in terms of making that possible and working to achieve it, essentially, unless we make humanity more rational, then we will be playing this game on ultra hard mode, right? Because again, the biggest problem in the world is that humans are irrational, right? That's why they're doing all of these crazy irrational things. So to solve suffering and to work towards a universe-wide extinction without solving that problem seems quite unlikely to me, or at least it would be much more difficult. So if we can solve the problem of humans being irrational, then effectively we solve every problem in the world in one go. Right? So human irrationality is the only obstacle to anything. Right? Everything else, it would just be like, oh, well, okay, we need to work out the science and the engineering for it. It's difficult, but we can try, right? Whereas we can't try right now because humans are the obstacle. Their irrationality, their support for extreme suffering is the main obstacle. So how do you overcome that obstacle? Well, you can grow the movement with activism, but that might not be enough. That said, it's difficult to predict the future as well. It could be enough, right? Who knows? For example, I've been telling everyone that humanity is still evolving, and that we are genetically evolving every day, right? The newer generations, I suspect, are getting genetically more rational with time. So in that sense, it's very possible that we are on an easy track to total extinction, an easy track to a more rational world. And just this is just a side thought, right? A shower thought almost. But think about it this way, right? People are always saying that, like, the older generations are always more racist, right? The older generation, the last generation, they really messed everything up. It's the smarter people are in the younger generations now. It's possible. What if that is, the pattern that's always been throughout the entirety of human history, right? That we are just actually getting smarter each generation. I genuinely do believe this, right? And I do believe that that's why it's now reached extinctionism, right? We finally reached rationality. So we are very optimistic about the future of the pro-extinction movement. Very optimistic, very confident, to be honest, right? Because essentially humanity is going in the right direction of becoming more rational. Right? So if humanity keeps evolving this way, if the culture and the level of rationality in the culture also keeps evolving that way, then it's all going perfectly on track to the extinctionism ideology. And if people if people start to try and improve their own genetics, right? If humanity starts to try and improve its genetics, just like it's doing with, plants and food and animals, right? We've been messing with the genetics of, dogs and all of our food sources, right? So it's like we are very experienced as a species at messing with genetics, right? We love doing it. We love the benefits from messing with genetics and trying to improve them. So if humanity does that with its own intelligence and tries to make its brain better, right, starts creating, more intelligent babies and stuff, then that is also pretty much guaranteed to lead towards extinctionism. So, we are super confident, super optimistic about it. For us, it's like we're almost guaranteed for the world to accept extinction, right? Now, you have to remember that, this is the right thing to do. Like, this is objectively the right thing to do. That there is no way to disagree with this. So we have being correct on our side, right? It's the ultimate advantage that this is the correct thing to do. And we can prove it, right? We can demonstrate it very easily. Someone in the chat says, this guy stinks. Okay, say it to my face. Look, come and debate me. Come and tell me why I'm wrong. Oh, we've got Amal in the Discord. Welcome, Amal. And yeah, anyone else that wants to join the Discord and debate, join us here. And again, it's a very smooth and quick and easy process to join the Discord so that you can debate me live on YouTube right now. Like if you go to this website and join the voice channel, we can be debating on YouTube like within 10 seconds from now. It's very quick and easy. And anyone else that just wants to ask questions or have a discussion, you can also join it and we'll get you up, we'll get you on the stream. But yeah, look, don't just say in the chat, oh, this guy stinks or this guy's a loser, like he's saying in the chat. Give us some reasons why you disagree with Extinction. Right, tell us why you think Extinction would be wrong. Give me something to work with here, guys, right? That's all I'm asking. That's the only thing I ask. If you're going to criticize me or you're going to criticize Extinctionism, just give us a reason why, right? And, you know, it sounds like I'm setting the bar really low. But most people will refuse to give any sort of reason for why they disagree with it. So I can't, you know, debate somebody that says, "Oh, you're stupid," right? There's no debate that I can have with that. But if you say like, "Oh, Extinction would be unfair," at least I can try and, you know, talk about that, right? Something to actually work with. All right, going back to the chat, we've got a few comments to go through now. So, Miller Lucas says, you're cooking. Keep explaining this, bro. Thank you, Lucas. I see that you're a good fan of the show. That's great. And you're obviously in the WhatsApp group and the Discord. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, if you like this kind of stuff and explaining rationality, well, I have a lot more in the tank, right? I actually have a lot more in the tank. And in fact, I'm holding it back, right? So I want to actually get more into it. But yeah, I'm holding it back right now. So yeah, I have a lot more cooking to do, basically. And yeah, look, the rationality itself is something that we need to get to grips with, right? So you can kind of see it as this. And again, I have so much to say on this topic, right? I've literally been studying this for the last 7 years every day. So I have just infinite amazing things to tell you about this, essentially. So not, you know, this is not the only thing I have to say about it. I have loads of stuff. So, yeah, as I've said, we have evolved from animals, right? And we have not fully evolved out of being animals, okay? So, essentially, we have an animalistic operating system in our head. And the really amazing thing about this is that it creates an incredibly stable and effective mind. Okay, so you know, think of all of the the geniuses in the world and all the great stuff they're doing. You know, the powerful, complex relationships they have with their family, their friends, etc. Right? All of this, the stuff that makes humans amazing. Okay, so the animalistic operating system, which irrationally relies on survival and reproduction, right? It forces you to be obsessed with those things or to at least value them massively more than you should, right? So the values for survival and reproduction are irrationally high, and this creates irrationality, right? Because you're supporting something for no reason, essentially, right? Supporting life and reproduction as if it makes perfect sense and there's like loads of really good reasons to do so, right? And that it makes perfect sense. So you end up supporting that and fighting for it when there are no good reasons, right? So in the brain, right, if you think of like what's been committed to memory essentially, right, the values for survival and reproduction are really high, but without any actual logical basis, right? Without a valid reason for it. So they support survival and reproduction like, you know, like cult members almost, and there's no actual reason for it. So it's an irrational support and valuing of survival and reproduction. And it's forced, so you can't help it. You have to support survival and reproduction, and you have to fight for them, even if it's wrong, and there's actually no reason to do so. Okay, so usually when you fight for something and you're arguing and arguing in favor of something like the end of all suffering, right? You actually have good reasons to do so, and you can explain it. And you won't end up saying complete gibberish and nonsense when you're trying to explain why you support extinction and the end of all suffering. Whereas if you try to explain why you support life and survival and reproduction, you will end up just saying complete gibberish and nonsense, because there are no rational arguments in favor of life and reproduction continuing, right? Because they are irrational things to begin with. No individual would ever rationally want to live when they are in infinite danger and of unacceptable horrors, essentially, just for the short-term small benefit of getting some pleasure, essentially. So the reality is that the dangers massively, massively outweigh any reason to want to live for yourself, right? Now, this is actually objectively true. And if you're rational enough to be able to calculate that thought process, right, to carry out that thought, then the result will be that we shouldn't exist, right? That we have to favor the safety of non-existence, right, over infinite danger. So what would you rather have, safety or infinite danger? Okay, now it's not just as simple as that. It becomes more obvious that we should favor the safety the more you actually learn about the suffering and the infinite risk of suffering. So, for example, think of it this way. Imagine the worst life ever lived, right? It's probably so far beyond comprehension that nobody would come close to being able to guess how bad it was or what it was actually like. So basically, yeah, it's all about deluding yourself into thinking that these types of extreme suffering don't exist, that it won't happen to you, probably won't happen to anyone else, that if it does, it won't be that bad, or you can just unalive yourself if it does happen to you. But yeah, it's based on irrationality, right? So again, if you were rational, then you would be able to essentially, yeah, understand what the worst life ever lived. Well, you'd have some understanding of what it's like, a better understanding, and you'd also realize, like, wow, no one should ever have to go through that. That's insane. Now, the worst life ever lived is a pretty extreme example, so maybe I'm taking it too far in that sense, right? Because again, people struggle to understand extreme suffering. So maybe we need to take it down to like a lower level so their brains can accommodate. But even if you just say a bad life, right? It's not something that's acceptable to force others into, right? An entire life of suffering. It should be obvious, right? Okay, let's go back into the chat. We've got more comments and stuff. Okay, we've got loads of comments now. That's pretty good. I'm going to try and get onto them. Did you know that psychosis is not the lack of reason, but the lack of everything but reason, which makes you insane? Yeah, I'm not sure about that, bro. Only animals that hunt for sport? No. All animals should be made safe from suffering, and only total extinction would do that. So yeah, no individual, no type of life should have to live, should have to suffer. It's just not right. Someone says they're going to clip this and put it on TikTok. Fantastic. Someone says extinction will only set us back. It will only set the selfish people back. But for the victims, it is the ultimate relief, the only right thing to do for them. It's the only correct thing. So yeah, if you care about selfish people more than the victims, then you essentially care about child abusers more than their victims, right? You care about the happy ones more than the unhappy ones. You care about the lucky ones more than the unlucky ones, right? Instead of helping someone that needs help, you would help someone that doesn't really need help. You would give them like more money, even though they've already got some. Which people do all the time, by the way. People actually donate to rich people. Like, how crazy is that? People actually donate to rich people. Like, poor people donate to rich people. So yeah, people don't care about the unlucky ones in the world. They obsess over the lucky ones, right? They want to be them, they want to glorify them, and the existence of suffering and victims is just an inconvenience in the obsession for pleasure that people have. All right, let's continue on through the chat. We've got loads of comments to get through, so I'm going to try and get through them. I disagree because physical extinction will not end consciousness. Well, you don't know that. That's just some spiritual nonsense, right? There's no evidence of an afterlife, and saying that we shouldn't end suffering because there might be an afterlife is just ridiculous, right? It's like saying we shouldn't end child abuse because there might be an afterlife. What are you talking about, dude? Of course we should end suffering. There's no evidence of an afterlife, and even if there was reincarnation, extinction would still be the right thing to do. Even if there was an afterlife, extinction would still be the right thing to do, right? To prevent as much suffering as we can do. I mean, literally, when we're doing forceful extinction, right, there will be victims who are literally begging for it, right? Like, please do me next, right? So this is not setting things back. This is providing the relief from suffering and the safety from suffering, which the victims are desperate for. And when I say desperate for, like, I cannot convey the extent to just how desperate they are for it, right? Because it's so extreme. It's insane. You know, people want to believe in the fantasy that nobody wants to die, right? There's nobody out there wishing they were dead. Well, the reality is, you know, if this is like, I don't know, like they're so wrong they're down here, right? Whereas the reality of how badly people want to die and to be safe from suffering, it's like it's through the roof, guys. It's through the roof. It's in the sky. It's in outer space. People are begging for death. People are begging for extinction, right? They're begging for their suffering to end. So, you know, we have to help the victims, we have to help the sufferers. For example, like when we do forceful extinction, right? We might be literally saving children from their child abusers, right? We'll be literally saving victims of depression from a life of cruelty and suffering. We'll be saving people that are about to suffer terribly from extreme suffering, right? Think of the victims who extinction will help, right? People are not capable of thinking of the validity of the extinction argument. So they will irrationally just ignore all of the points that make it valid and make it correct, and essentially just appeal to essentially the downside of extinction, as if extinction isn't made valid by the positives, right? The validity of it, which is that it helps the sufferers, it prevents their suffering, right? So they're not able to see how that is actually the right thing to do, how it's valid, right? The prevention of suffering is like, ooh, what? But happiness is more important. Why are you focusing on the negatives, essentially, right? Why are you focusing on helping the victims when we should just be focusing on the positives? Let's just be selfish and not help anyone, right? Why focus on the negatives? Oh, why are you being so depressing? The world is negative, and if we don't accept the reality of it, then we end up ignoring the victims and saying that helping them is just being negative. Right? I mean, think about it. People literally hate activism. They're like, oh, a stinky activist. Because yeah, the idea of helping other people is like, it literally disgusts selfish people. Right? Think of a dystopia full of evil people, right? If they see a good person trying to do activism, of course they're going to be angry. They're like, oh my god, this guy is trying to make the world a fair place. That's not good for us, right? Okay, we've got millions of comments in the chat now, so I'm going to try and get through as many as we can. And anyone else that wants to debate, get yourself in the Discord, right? The Discord link is right here. I swear to God, it takes 10 seconds to type it in and to join straight into the debate on YouTube, live with me, right? It's ultra easy. All right, I'm again going through the chat. Guys hate God because they're hiding the fact they worship Satan. Not sure. Like, most people are just speaking gibberish all the time, right? If you go through like YouTube comments or any sort of human communication, 99% of it is just gibberish, right? Humans are just a terrible species, which we need to improve, right? Remember, the pro-extinction movement supports humanity as the solution, right? We don't want to hate on humanity and make it feel bad. Instead, we should encourage it to be more moral, more ethical, to be more responsible, essentially, and to work towards the only right thing to do, doing the right thing for the world and working towards a suffering-free world as well. Because we know that allowing suffering is never justifiable, right? It's never justifiable to allow extreme suffering so that others can have happiness. That's just not something that can ever be justifiable, and therefore extinction will always be the right thing to do. Allowing life to exist just so it can have a bit of fun will always be the wrong thing to do, basically. Okay? Let's just adjust this a little bit. Okay. But that same operating system also allowed for the refinement, more gibberish, basically. Yeah, guys, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat now. I'll try and get through them. If there's anything you want me to explain, if there's any topics you want me to go over, let me know in the chat, and I'll try and get through all of them. What does OS mean? Well, I think it usually means operating system. Someone says, why is suffering so bad? It's just a part of life. Well, the reality is that asking why suffering is bad is kind of like asking why 1 + 1 = 2, right? Because it's like, if you saw 1 + 1 = 2, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. And if you saw a child being abused and someone says that's bad, then it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, obviously that's bad. So essentially, it's unreasonable to ask why suffering is bad. Right? And this is what a lot of people really need to work on understanding. That when people are asking, can you prove suffering is bad? Why is suffering so bad? Why do you care about it? Essentially, they might as well be asking, can you prove that 1 + 1 = 2? Now, if you've ever seen an attempt to prove that 1 + 1 = 2, then they often have like a whole page of equations and mathematics and all this, loads of complicated mathematics trying to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. But look, guys, it's unreasonable, right? If someone's saying like, oh, we have to send you to prison because we did the maths on your tax and 1 + 1 = 2, you wouldn't say, well, prove that 1 + 1 = 2. Otherwise, I'm not going to let you take me to prison, right? Prove that 1 + 1 = 2. Right? Imagine if someone said that, right, to the tax man. The tax man's going to be like, shut the hell up. You're going to prison, right? I'm not proving that 1 + 1 = 2 just so that you can waste my time. And so proving that suffering is bad is the same thing, right? It is irrational and unreasonable to ask why suffering is bad. Because it is just like saying, well, can you prove that 1 + 1 = 2? It's like, right, I'm going to have to like pull out some mathematical equations and all sorts of nonsense, and it's going to take years of mathematic exploration. No, it's unreasonable to demand that, right? And to ask, can you prove that child abuse is bad, is also as unreasonable as asking for proof that 1 + 1 = 2. So we know that suffering is bad, it's obvious, and it is technically unreasonable to ask for proof that it's bad. Because again, you might as well be asking for proof that 1 + 1 = 2, or that the sky is blue, right? You might be asking for proof of anything which is unreasonable to ask for proof for, right? Is extreme cruelty bad? Does 1 + 1 = 2? Like, come on. It's not reasonable to ask that. It's genuinely irrational and unreasonable to ask for why suffering is bad. It's like, why is punching a baby in the face bad? It's like, shut the hell up, you know it's bad, right? Imagine if a child abuser said, can you prove that child abuse is bad? You would punch him in the face and say, we do not need to prove that child abuse is bad. That is an unreasonable request, right? So it's the same with suffering, right? Why is forcing someone into a terrible life a bad thing? Come on, guys, that's an unreasonable question. So look, we will see this again and again, where people are continuing to ask, why is suffering bad? Can you prove it's bad? But what's really happening here, right, is that effectively the inhibitor detects, the result of that question, right? So that they try and understand extinction, or that they read about it, they hear about it, and essentially, in order to prevent them from understanding it correctly, their brain will make them say something irrational. It will make them think and say and feel something irrational, to the point where they think it's rational to ask, can you prove that child abuse is bad? Can you prove that suffering is bad? Right? So they're only asking these irrational, invalid questions, unreasonable questions, because their brain is forcing them to do so. Essentially, they cannot process the question, and so it goes wrong, right? Now, it doesn't just go wrong, it purposefully goes wrong, right? In an intentional way. So why is suffering so bad? It's just a part of life. Well, child abuse shouldn't just be a part of life. And if you think that's just acceptable, then it shows that you have no morals, no morality, no ethics. If you're saying, why is cruelty bad? Then, yeah, guys, it's unreasonable, and it demonstrates that you have no morality, no ethics at all, right? Because to say, why is suffering bad? Like, it's effectively asking, like, why is cruelty bad? Like, why is it bad to be extremely cruel and evil? It's just not a reasonable question. Right, suffering is bad. If you get terminal cancer, it's obviously bad. If a child gets abused, it's obviously bad. Right? We don't need to work on proving that that's bad. That's a completely unreasonable, irrational thing, which only the structure in the brain responsible for suppressing intelligence and logic and rationality, only that structure will make you say, can you prove suffering is bad? Nothing else, right? So these people don't actually want to know, can you prove suffering is bad? It's that essentially their brain is pushing them to a higher standard of proof, or like an irrational standard of proof, essentially. So a lot of people struggle with this in other ways as well, where they say things like, if there's any chance that extinction wouldn't work, then we shouldn't do it. It's like, well, no, you don't need that standard of proof and evidence that it's going to work in order to support it. That doesn't make sense. And then other black and white things, like people say, well, we should only support extinction if everybody is suffering. It's like, no, that's a really just irrational, crazy way to see it, right? A childish way to see it. Okay, over 40,000 years ago, there were human civilizations. Yeah, and we should make everything extinct, whether it's human civilizations or animals. Right, I'm going to try and go through more comments. They've been stacking up a bit. I love for the experience. It's fun. You see everything in terms of utility. Well, no, we see everything in terms of responsibility and ethics, right? Is it ethical to allow happiness at the expense of extreme cruelty? The answer is no, essentially. So, most people don't want to answer that question. They want to just say that, yeah, who cares about that question, basically? Like, it's not even a question worth asking, if the victims deserve to suffer or not. Yeah, it's just take it for granted. Yeah, they should suffer so that we can be happy. Right? So, yeah, they definitely don't want to answer the question of, is it fair to allow life to suffer? Alright, moving on. Why does a piece of music exist? To be experienced for its own... This is just nonsense, right? So when people are trying to find meaning and copium, they're trying to find coping mechanisms to support life existing, you will see it come out in a very privileged way, right? They will demonstrate their privilege. And again, it can be helpful to picture... Imagine the pro-lifers, the people that say suffering is good. Imagine them as a small minority of demons in hell, right? Now, humans are a small minority on this planet, and the majority are suffering terribly, right? Wild animals being eaten alive constantly, just all day, every day. So, in order to understand and kind of picture how embarrassing and cringe people's privilege is, yeah, you have to kind of put what they say in context, right? Understand that it's complete gibberish, and that the only thing that actually matters is that the entire world is just an ocean of torture and victims that we have to help. Right? So there's an ocean of victims being tortured all around the world, and everyone wants them to keep being tortured. We are the only ones that are saying that it's wrong. Right? So they are relying on our help. So, yeah, look, someone said in the chat, music has to be experienced, basically. So this is like the extent of their delusion, right? There's children and animals being tortured around them, and they're just completely unaware of it, and they're like, music has to be experienced. Extinction would be wrong, right? So you're in an ocean of children and animals being abused and tortured all around you, and you're like, end all suffering? Nah, I mean, what about like music and stuff, right? If that exists, it has to be experienced. All of these children and animals should keep being tortured for that reason. It's completely insane, right? So, a lot of these excuses and fantasy crazy things they say, it's based on privilege, right? Extreme levels of privilege where they've never really suffered that much in their life, and they have a completely warped, skewed, false understanding of reality, where the only thing, the only considerations, the only thing in the world really is our privileged fantasy bubble, right? So anything outside of that just doesn't exist to them. So it makes them seem like completely privileged, elite, billionaires almost, right? Because essentially they're unable to consider the victims. So their problems seem much bigger, right? Like, oh, but we have to listen to music, right? While everyone around them is being, horrifically tortured. So the problem for them is, oh, but what about music and stuff, right? While everyone else is screaming in pain, like, ah! So, yeah, they cannot care about the victims or their suffering. They can only care about completely trivial problems like, oh, but what about music? If we went extinct, music wouldn't be enjoyed anymore, right? Well, that doesn't help all the victims being tortured. That just literally condemns them to torture so that music can exist, right? Complete insanity. All right, let's try and get back to the chat. Get back to some comments. If you don't like it, take it out yourself. Take yourself out. No. So if we don't like children and animals being abused, taking ourselves out doesn't help them, right? So I don't understand why you're suggesting we take ourselves out. That doesn't help all of the animals who are being abused, right? Only a forceful, total, and permanent extinction will help them. Right? So if we take ourselves out like you're suggesting, then we are leaving the children to the pedophiles. We are leaving the animals to the sadists and the psychopaths who are, making videos about it on TikTok, right? Or the child abusers selling the content on the dark web. So you're saying we should just leave them to it, basically. Oh, if you don't like the suffering in the world, only worry about your own suffering. Yeah, all the children being abused, animals being abused, leave them to suffer and take care of your own suffering. Those who can't help themselves, well, leave them to suffer. Help yourself. No, right? These are all incredible demonstrations of, the evil which lurks inside the human psychology. Right? It's pure evil, right? Essentially, the entire human psychology is evil, effectively, right? How is he an activist when he is alive and breathing? Yeah, a lot of people really seem to struggle to understand that we want to do extinction in a fair way, right? So that means helping animals and those that can't help themselves first, right? If the only people capable of doing extinction go extinct, then that doesn't really help all of the animals and the children who are being tortured. It does the opposite. It does the opposite of helping them. It removes the only hope, the only help that will ever come to help them. So yeah, starting with ourselves does not end animal suffering. It does not end human suffering. It effectively does the exact opposite and supports human and animal suffering continuing. So these people saying just start with yourself, effectively they're not capable of intelligent contributions to this conversation, right? Because obviously starting with yourself is the most counterproductive thing that we can do, right? That literally goes as against the intention of the movement as possible. So yeah, it's amazing that these people literally suggest that we do the most counterproductive thing possible for the movement, right? And they're suggesting it, thinking it's actually good advice. This is further proof of their, insanely high levels of irrationality, right? That they can actually think that suggesting the most counterproductive thing possible is actually the most productive thing possible. Like, guys, does that not just blow your mind, right? We might as well be performing magic tricks on this stream at this point, right? So, I mean, effectively, I'm trying to expose the irrationality. Now, if you don't expose it, then it will just continue on, essentially. And in a debate, for example, if you don't expose their, dishonest tactics, their dodging of the question, right? Unless you shine a bright light on their dishonest tactics, right? A spotlight on it, and pick it apart and analyze it and make it very clear, then yeah, the nonsense will just continue on flowing, basically, right? So yeah, essentially it's like a stream of irrationality, and we pick it apart and say this is why it's irrational. The system maintaining that irrationality will hate that. It hates it, right? And as I've explained, it will get more and more desperate. It will increase the irrationality level as a response, right? As a defense mechanism. So the brain will actively make you irrational on a case-by-case basis, right? It's essentially it's watching everything, and it's waiting for any rationality or logic that exceeds the limit. And if it sees any come into the system, into the mental system, it will inhibit it. So we should child abuse shouldn't be allowed anymore, right? Oh, a rational thing. No, it's got to be inhibited. Child abuse makes you stronger. So they will say something, they will think and then say something basically as irrational as what you said is rational. So you say something really rational, they say something really irrational in order to counter it. And essentially they buy the lie, right? Their brain tricks them into saying something irrational, and they believe it. They believe it makes sense. Whereas to us, it's very obvious and clear and easy to see that it doesn't make sense at all. So you can actually prove that to people. You can prove to them that essentially their system is corrupt. But the problem is that it's not just that the operating system, the software, is corrupt. Essentially, the reason why we can't fix their software, make them rational, is because the hardware doesn't allow for it, right? If you have a really old computer, it's not going to run anything modern, right? And it's the same with brains. So an old, outdated human brain is not going to be capable of running anything but animalistic software, right? Animal software, survive and reproduce, right? So the more rational you are, the more capacity your brain has, the more capable you are of ethics and morality, which directly goes against your own selfish interests like survival and reproduction, basically. Alright, again, if anyone wants to debate or have a chat, then join yourself into the Discord. Now, you can do this very easily. You can even, if you're watching us on YouTube on your mobile, then you can just minimize it, and the video on YouTube will still play. You'll still be able to see and hear me, and then you can go on Discord, or you can go on your Safari, actually. Go on your web browser and type this in, right? And then you will join the Discord, and literally it takes a couple of seconds to bring you onto the stage to debate me live on YouTube. So it's very easy. So if anyone wants to do that, then get yourself into this URL, okay, and we'll bring you up. Alright, going back to the comments and the chat. Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We've got quite a few chat comments now. So this is that British humour I've been hearing about. No. The pro-extinction movement is a serious movement, right? Suffering in the world is serious, and we need a serious solution, right? So the only way to end all suffering is with extinction. So That's the solution that we're going with, because there is no other solution, and we cannot allow extreme suffering and bad lives to continue. So we need a solution, right? We need a way to achieve the end of all suffering. No more child abuse, no more animal abuse, no more bad lives, no more cruelty, no more extreme suffering. So the only solution is total extinction, right? So that no more children are born into terrible lives that they didn't ask for. No more animals are born to be tortured when they're not asking for it, right? So there is no other solution. Extinction is the only solution, and it has to be forceful. It can't be optional, otherwise it will just never happen, right? So we have to do a non-optional, mandatory extinction, and this will be done by euthanasia, not by sterilization. Sterilization only helps the next generation, whereas euthanasia provides immediate safety from a bad life, from a bad death, and from suffering, from reproducing, or from causing others to suffer as well. Right, so euthanasia is infinitely better when it comes to prevention of suffering than sterilization, right? We really would never prefer to use sterilization. Euthanasia will always be preferred, which means that we will not allow the current the current at the time generation to live out the rest of their lives. They will not be allowed to live out the rest of their lives, basically. They will have to be euthanized, and they will not get the chance to keep living, right? Now, if we don't do that, then there will be horrific extreme suffering. So the question is, do we allow that just so that some people can keep living? And the answer is no, it's not worth it. That's why we can't allow it, right? So the suffering and harm and lives of pure hell that could result from allowing people to keep living, right, in this dangerous world full of suffering, right? The suffering that would result from allowing them to live instead of forcefully making them extinct is not worth it. Okay? So life existing is not worth it. Allowing it to keep living is not worth it, and it's not ethical, right? It's genuinely unethical, right? Because you're saying, yeah, who cares if you suffer terribly? There's effectively no amount of cruelty or extreme suffering you can experience which makes life not worth living. But that doesn't make sense, right? It's irrational. Just like all of these pro-life positions are completely irrational, right? So in the same way that they would say, yeah, that there's no amount of suffering you can experience that would make extinction rational, they would say that there's no amount of victims experiencing extreme suffering which would make extinction rational, right? They would say, yeah, 99% of the population begging for death, extinction would be wrong, right? 99% chance of ending up in a life of pure hell, euthanasia would be wrong. You should keep living, even if there's a high chance of being trapped in a life of pure hell, extreme suffering, begging for death, wishing you'd never been born, right? You could get hit by a car tomorrow, end up with brain damage, chronic pain, the inability to ask for help or to communicate, right? And then, you know, what could possibly happen, right? You might suffer terribly for the next 50 years, wishing you'd never been born, begging for death every moment, right? And completely incapable of escaping due to the resulting disability. And this is happening all around the world, right? This is not a hypothetical. This is the reality, the truth of our world. It is full of extreme suffering, lives of pure hell, and it's not worth it just so that there can be a bit of happiness, right? So if we make extinction optional, you know, let's take a sample of 100 people. Let's say that 5 of them end up, you know, in a terrible state, right? Again, trapped in a life of pure hell, begging for death, but the death never comes. So it's just suffering with no escape until eventually they die in a horrible way as well. So should we allow that? Should we allow someone to suffer horrifically, begging for death for a very long time, just so that others can have a good time? No, essentially. It's not right. It's not ethical. If you care about life, then you will not allow it to suffer horrifically. You will not allow it to be exposed to the possibility of suffering horrifically, right? And the reality is that it's not possible for us to make life safe. So life isn't safe. It's not safe for life to exist, and it's also impossible to make it safe for life to exist, right? It's actually not possible to make it safe for life to exist, ever. Now, any system that you create could still go wrong. So only omniscience can provide the certainty of safety which life should have if it's to ever exist. So life should only exist with certainty of safety from extreme suffering and a bad life, right? Life should never exist when there's a possibility of being trapped in a bad life or trapped in extreme suffering, because it's just not right, it's not fair. You cannot allow that possibility. We cannot allow the victims to be subjected to that. And they also cannot make the right decisions for themselves. If you make extinction optional, people will make the wrong decision, continue to live, and then suffer horrifically, right? And, a lot of people think that there is no amount of suffering that could ever make non-existence beneficial or preferable. But that's another part of the complete delusion, the fantasy that people are living in, the false world, the false reality that's completely inaccurate, right? They believe that there is no possibility of ending up in suffering or a life of pure hell, to where you should have taken the chance at extinction, right? If the pro-extinction movement is rolling out extinction in the future, and for some stupid reason we make it optional, right? How many people are just going to just forget about it, right? Because they're not capable of actually thinking about it properly. They're not capable of doing the thought process which will essentially make them say, yeah, actually, non-existence and extinction is the right thing. Let's do it. So they're not capable of doing that thought process. So essentially, if we were to make extinction optional, right, you're asking people to make a decision that they're genuinely incapable of making, and so they will make the wrong decision and they will suffer terribly. So we can't do that. So that's why extinction cannot be optional, because the only life forms that would ever disagree with extinction will be irrational ones, right? So they will be by default making the wrong decision. So it's like, hey guys, would you like to make the wrong decision? No, we're not going to do that, basically. So to make extinction optional would be literally to say, hey guys, would you like to make the wrong decision? It would be the wrong thing to do, right? To offer people the wrong decision, the wrong option, right? An option which leads to extreme suffering and lives of pure hell for children and innocent victims, okay? Alright, let's take it back to the chat. I like your take. How about you start with yourself? Well, it's amazing how these people all think they're super original by saying that, right? But again, they are hilariously irrational by quite literally suggesting the most counterproductive thing possible, right? If the activists in the pro-extinction movement all start with themselves, then that makes extinction impossible. Whereas if we grow the movement like we are, then that makes extinction possible. So yeah, these people saying start with yourself, they think they're geniuses, but it couldn't possibly be further from the truth, right? It's as far from the truth as it could possibly be. Their advice is literally the most counterproductive, unhelpful thing possible, and they think it makes perfect sense. So things that are literally the worst advice possible, they think it's the best advice possible. And that's not because, like, they have bad education. It's because their brains don't work properly. Got it? Alright, let's see if there's any questions worth answering. Humans have already done enough damage on Earth already. For who? For who is the Earth damaged? Because all of that damage to the Earth actually just prevents suffering. So, yeah, it's you're displaying your irrationality there, right? So the comment again is, besides, humans have already caused enough damage on Earth already in all aspects. I'm hoping for human extinction soon. Well, the thing is that if we don't do animal extinction, then they will suffer terribly. All of the damage that you're talking about, which we've done to the Earth, has actually reduced suffering. So this is really a really fun fact. Okay, this is a really fun fact for everyone. So since humanity started existing, it has only reduced suffering on Earth. Right? So humanity's existence has always been a net positive for the amount of suffering in the world. Right? A net positive in terms of it's doing a good job at reducing it. Okay, so as humanity, so basically the world is an ocean of just quintillions and quintillions of animals being tortured, right? Humanity comes in, wipes out half of that, and then, it's now 8 billion humans instead of quintillions and quintillions of animals being tortured, right? So humanity has only ever reduced suffering by existing, and the more humans, the less suffering there is on the planet. And even animal agriculture reduces suffering because it reduces the wild animal populations so incredibly drastically, right? You're chopping down an entire forest to have a few cows, right? So it massively reduces the population of the victims and the sufferers. And would you rather be a cow on a farm, or would you rather be a mouse being, running for your life through a forest and then being eaten alive? Right? So even the victims of animal agriculture are suffering less than the victims of nature, like wild animals. So there's fewer victims with less suffering from animal agriculture. So even evil things that humanity is doing, like animal agriculture, is actually reducing suffering. So every time we chop down a forest to build new furniture, to build new chopsticks, or to start a new mining operation, or to chop down a forest to build a new data center, all of these things actually reduce suffering. So overfishing has reduced the fish populations by half, and that has massively reduced lives of pure hell and extreme suffering, right? By half, effectively. And it's the same for wild animals on the surface of the planet. We have taken over half of the habitable surface of the earth is just agriculture, right? So chopped down all the forests, got rid of all of the wild animals killing each other, and replaced it with, plants, basically. So yeah, humanity has only served to massively reduce the suffering in the world since it began existing, right? Since it evolved into humanity. So it's really ironic, right? Humanity has always been the solution to suffering, and it still is. So yeah, ironically, the pro-extinction movement is extremely pro-humanity, because we are the only ones that can actually achieve extinction. So it's not that we're pro-humanity, it's that we are pro-extinction and pro-achieving extinction, right? And so logically that's only possible if humans do it, right? So we have to be pro-life, pro-humanity temporarily, so that we are pro the solution, right? Pro solving suffering, right? That's the reason why we're pro humanity reproducing and continuing to reproduce. It's so that we can make sure we do animal extinction first. If humanity begins to go extinct now, then it risks animal extinction, and it risks them suffering for millions or billions of more years. So it's not fair. Imagine if humanity has to continue reproducing for 1,000 years in order to achieve total animal extinction, and prevents billions of years of animal suffering. So just, yeah, it's worth it. Humans are more capable, they suffer less, right? We are the ones that can help. So we need more helpers, right? We need more of the good in the world, effectively. All right. See if there's any more interesting questions. Guys, look, if there's any topics that you want me to cover, then let us know in the chat right now. Are you a vegan or an antinatalist? No, I was both vegan and antinatalist, as were many of the people who are now in our movement. But we have upgraded from veganism and from antinatalism to extinctionism, because both veganism and antinatalism cause more suffering than they actually prevent. As I was explaining, we've chopped down all the forest and reduced all that suffering. A vegan world would have double the forests, double the fish, if not more, if not triple, basically, because veganism effectively supports environmentalism, just as antinatalism does too, right? Antinatalists want to leave the planet to animals so that they can continue to suffer for billions of years. So antinatalism reduces the number of humans on the planet, which increases wild animal suffering and reduces our ability to prevent and put an end to to all animal suffering, right? So humanity is the solution, especially for those that can't help themselves, whereas antinatalists would have the solution: just disappear and not help anyone else, just let them suffer terribly, let their suffering continue. Right? That's the antinatalist position. Let animals continue to suffer. We are not prepared to do that. We actually care about the animals. We don't want them to suffer. So veganism and antinatalism, ironically, are both bad for extinction. Now, the thing is that in the future, we would love to support both veganism and antinatalism. But if you go, I mean, they're great ideas. It's just that in the current situation, they both happen to be bad. So they are good things in theory, right? But in reality, they turn out to be bad for now. So we want to do total animal extinction first, and for humanity to keep existing and for that to be possible, we will have to go vegan, right? Humanity will have to be completely 100% vegan, or at least, mostly vegan in the future. Okay, that will have to happen when we have total animal extinction, right? We're going to have to keep eating something, so we will have to go vegan at that point. But we'll be able to do it in a way where it doesn't cause more suffering to wild animals, right? If you go vegan right now, you are giving back land, you are reforesting the wilds, right? More wild animals, more suffering. So if we can end animal agriculture and animal farming without it causing more suffering to wild animals, then we will do that. But anyone trying to do veganism today is going to end up causing more wild animal suffering. So the pro-extinction movement would be able to do it in a way where, we don't give that land back to wild animals, right? Whereas right now people do want to give the land back to wild animals, which will actually increase the amount of suffering. Okay? So yeah, again, most of our activists were vegan at one point, but realized that it causes more suffering in the current context of today. But, if that weren't the case, then we would all be supporting veganism quite a lot. Yeah, if veganism actually reduced suffering, we would support it. But we wouldn't support it as a solution to end all suffering, and we wouldn't actually be promoting it really. Maybe we would, but not as much as we promote extinction. PSA: you can click on Hayden and block him so you don't see his nonsense. Thank you. Keep the PSAs coming. I've been streaming on TikTok for like the last, 4 or 5 months, and I got banned, so I'm just starting to stream on YouTube. I appreciate the tips. Okay, going back to some more questions in the chat. Extinction for all the animals. You're damn right, right? No animal deserves to suffer. So you're pro-extinction by what means? Well, okay, so by what means? It would be euthanasia. We are pro-extinction by euthanasia. So the plan for our movement is specifically to grow the movement until we have enough people to take over the world, start running it ethically, start with animal extinction by euthanizing all of them and replacing our dependence on them, and also making their environments uninhabitable so that they can never come back, basically. Okay, so yeah, absolutely, euthanasia, mandatory for humans and for animals. That's how we're going to do extinction. Now that could take any different type of form, right? Format. For example, we want to do it in the most painless way possible, the nicest way possible, obviously. But for example, if we have to do it painfully, then we will, right? We are totally happy or prepared to do painful extinction if it's the only way to do it. Because the thing is that it's impossible to cause more suffering and pain than life is already causing to the victims. So let's say they're there suffering, and then you make them suffer for 60 seconds to end their suffering. It's really not that bad, right? 60 seconds to go to sleep versus an entire life of suffering and pain. It's nothing for that individual, and then obviously that prevents billions of years of more suffering as well. So that 60 seconds of going to sleep, it might be quite nice, right? If we get lucky and it's easy to do, we can make it painless. It might be really enjoyable. Like, oh my God, this feels amazing, and then that's it, you're gone, right? So it might not even cause any suffering to do extinction. Okay? And it certainly won't cause more than it prevents, right? Life is causing far more suffering than extinction could ever possibly cause, right? Ever, ever, ever. Especially, look, wild animals are just being eaten alive and starving to death in nature. Nothing else is going on there. It's just pure extreme suffering. So how could extinction make that worse? Right? It does the opposite. It makes it infinitely better by putting a stop to all of that extreme suffering. Lives of pure hell, right? Imagine being forced into an entire life of just pure excruciating pain, where you're wishing every moment that you'd never been born, begging for death every moment, just being tortured by life, basically. That's going on all around us, and it's not acceptable. We have to put an end to it. And sadly, people disagree with that. They think, yeah, they should suffer so that we can be happy. Well, that's the same opinion that slave owners had, right? So those that are suffering in this world, those who are in bad lives where they would be better off not being born, they are your slaves, right? You are saying they should suffer terrible lives of pure pain so that we can be happy. So it is essentially a type of slavery. It's a type of oppression, exploitation, cruelty, immorality. It's evil, right? Allowing life to exist is evil, basically. For me, I just want an asteroid to hit us and call it a day. Well, that doesn't really help very much, does it? Okay, we do have someone in the Discord. Let's see if he's ready to debate. So we've got Mr. Let's see, what's his name? I can't see his name very well because my Discord is a bit glitchy. But he's got Gimli as his profile pic. So Gimli, if you're ready for a debate, come back into the Discord. Let's try and start it. Let's bring you on to the YouTube live stream. Okay? And yeah, so I'm going to try and get this debate going. Hopefully he'll join us on the stream in a moment or two. And for anyone else, join the Discord and let's get you in the debate. Let's hear your side of the argument. It's very easy, really, to get you onto the stage, into the debate. So just join that, type that into your website, into your web browser, and essentially you'll come straight in. Alright, do we have any more comments while we're waiting for Gimli in the Discord to try and join us? Let's have a look. P.S. I want you to live. I don't mean it as an insult. Well, we want to live as well, right? Activists want to continue living so that we can help others, right? And again, we have to do animal extinction first, so we are completely in favor of humanity continuing to live, ourselves continuing to live. Now, extinctionists like myself, we understand that we would be better off not existing. So right now, if I were to stop existing, then that would be the ultimate benefit to me, right? That would be the best thing that could possibly happen for me selfishly, right? So this is our understanding of the world, that for every individual, every life form which exists right now, it would be infinitely better off if it stopped existing, okay? Because then it has no possibility of suffering. So the possibility of suffering and being trapped in a life of pure hell, that makes it so that it's not worth living. You would be better off not existing as a result. So extinctionists understand that we would be better off right now not existing, right? For us to stop existing immediately would be the best possible thing for ourselves. Okay? But we have to end all suffering, not just our own. Okay? We have to help those who can't help themselves. Right, so animals are being forced to exist and to suffer in agriculture. So it's like literally a factory operation, right? So they are being forced to exist to suffer, right? And humans are. It's insane, guys, right? So yeah, we only continue to exist and to live so that we can work towards a world where no one has to live, right? Help those that can't help themselves. So again, antinatalism or suicide, stuff like that, this does not cause extinction. This does not lead to human extinction or animal extinction. So we have to do extinction more intelligently, right? So that is why we are growing the movement, so that we can run the world ethically, take over the world once we have enough extinctionists, and then start doing animal extinction, and then working towards human extinction as well. But we have to start do animals first, basically. Okay, so we are staying alive to make that possible, to make the end of all animal suffering possible, right? Why don't you start with yourself? Because we want to end animal suffering first, right? It's as simple as that. And also, even if there were no animals, then if there were only humans, then we would still have to keep living, right? Unaliving yourself or starting with yourself does not cause human extinction. It does nothing to guarantee it, and in fact, by all counts, humanity will just keep continuing and reproducing and causing suffering. So we need active solutions to put a stop to that, right? That's why we support forceful total extinction, right? You have to use active solutions to stop suffering. You have to use force to actively defend the victims of suffering. Otherwise, force will be actively used against them to make them suffer. Okay, that's why extinction has to be forceful. You have to use force to defend the victims, otherwise force will be used against them to make them suffer, right? Okay, moving on. Let's see if there's any more interesting questions in the chat. Again, if you want me to go over any topics or answer any questions, guys, let me know. I'm happy to go into it. And yeah, we've got a couple people joining the Discord now. We've got someone called Joe. We've got this Gimli bloke. So guys, yeah, let's get you in. Let's get some debates. Look, the entire point of me streaming, my intention with this is to debate. Right, when I was on TikTok before I got banned a couple of days ago, it was just non-stop debates with real people, right? Just non-stop, absolutely non-stop, just debate, debate, debate. And that's what we want to get doing. But it's a bit more difficult on YouTube, so we're relying on Discord. However, yeah, please get into the Discord, guys. Start debating me. And look, you can also join the Discord so that you can, do a future debate, right? If you want to debate me in a few days from now, you can still join the Discord now. If you want to join my community, if you're a fan, if you want to support, or even just ask questions, you can still join the Discord. It's not just for debates. However, if you want to join the movement officially, then you should join through the official website, proextinction.com. There is a Discord server, there is a WhatsApp group, the links are on the official website, proextinction.com, and the main Discord has like thousands of people, right? Lots of people supporting the end of all suffering with forceful total extinction, right? And we are growing the movement globally. People around the entire planet are joining the movement every day, agreeing to forcefully carry out total extinction and the end of all suffering. Because again, we have to use force to defend the victims of suffering, otherwise force will be used against them. And so yeah, the community around the world is growing every day. And again, if you join through the website, join the main Discord server through the website, you will see that there's lots of people supporting it, right? Lots of people are waking up to the fact that we cannot allow cruelty, bad lives, and extreme suffering anymore. It's not fair to the victims, right? It's not fair. And look, guys, it's difficult to understand why extinction is right when you're not thinking about who it actually helps, okay? You either don't care about who it helps or you just can't be bothered to consider it. So start thinking about who extinction helps, right? It helps everyone, essentially, right? It helps all of the victims of life and all of those who are happy and having a good life. It helps them as well, because they could go on to suffer terribly. So it prevents that suffering as well, right? It's the ultimate prevention of cruelty and suffering. And there is no other way to essentially put an end to cruelty and extreme suffering and abuse. So you have to decide, right? Well, do we want life to exist even if it has all of this extreme cruelty? And the answer is no, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's like insanely not worth it. Like it's ridiculously not worth it, right? The extreme suffering in this world, it cannot be made up for by some selfish people having a happy life, right? People think that an entire life of a chicken being tortured is a good trade, right? For them to have a chicken burger. So that's the level of respect that people treat the victims with, right? Oh, you're tortured for your entire life as a chicken. Well, it's worth it so that I can have one meal. I can make you into a sandwich. So the same people with this same complete lack of morality, of course they're going to support extreme suffering and bad lives existing so that some can have good lives, right? These are people that literally support torturing animals for months and months, if not years, just to make one meal out of it which lasts 10 minutes, right? Let's torture animals for years for literally like 10 minutes of pleasure when we don't even need to do this. Like it's ridiculous levels of cruelty, right? Ridiculous levels of cruelty. So to expect people like that to support the end of all suffering, it is asking too much, unfortunately. So we're just asking the rational, the smart people to support it. That's all. We don't expect all of the pro-suffering, crazy people in the world, the vast majority of them, we don't expect them to ever see reason, right? Because they don't have the genetic capacity to do so. They are effectively animals. So extinctionists are kind of like the first rational humans. Like you could almost call us the first people, right? Because these pro-suffering humans, can you really call them people? I mean, they are effectively just animals, right? On a technical level, though. They are just irrational, like animals. They just do survival and reproduction like animals. They cause extreme harm like animals do without any care for it. So what kind of distinction is there? They can talk. Well, animals can talk as well to some extent. So we have technology, yeah, but that doesn't make us rational, right? All right, let's agree. Let's see. Sorry, let's see if there's any more chat comments. Your movement is a bowel movement. No logic detected. Guys, look, bring on some logic. Tell us why extinction would be wrong. Tell us why it would be bad. Give me something to work with. Or ask me a question. I thought you wanted to do a movement or something, not just a debate. Yeah, we want to do debates. We want to grow the movement, and we're doing debates in order to grow the movement, right? Because people love watching debates. It's a good way to explore different topics on extinctionism as well. And one of the best thing about doing live debates is that it gives people a chance to ask me challenging questions, right? So I really want challenging questions. That's what I'm capable of doing it, right? So put me to my full use, guys, right? Give me some challenging questions. Okay, teaching this ideology is not sane. No logic detected, bro. No logic detected. So you're probably pro-extinction. How would you do that? Look, guys, if you want to read more about it, then check out our website, proextinction.com. We have a very comprehensive FAQ. We have a manifesto. Pretty much all of your questions will be answered in detail on the website, proextinction.com. Someone saying, wouldn't extinction cause suffering? Not realistically. Any suffering that extinction causes will be negligible, right? It will be effectively zero. Essentially, life is causing extreme torture to the majority of the population, animals, and even the humans, right? Think how many humans beg for death every day. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's like millions, basically, right? So extinction is not going to cause them more suffering. It's going to end their suffering. It's going to help them out of that suffering. So extinction, it might cause some suffering for the selfish ones that don't care about the victims in this world. But for the victims, those that actually need help, need moral consideration, it's going to be the biggest relief possible, right? The prevention of more extreme torture. So there are things in this life which are worse than death. And people and animals are going through them all the time. right? So yeah, extinction is absolutely the right thing to do. It is the relief, okay? It's the only solution for their suffering. I don't think anyone in your chat is joining your website or Discord. Well, that's very negative of you. You should have seen my my TikTok channel. If you don't think anyone is going to join, you are very wrong. Before I just started on YouTube a couple of days ago, I had like over 10 million views on TikTok. I had 28k followers basically. We were getting loads of people joining the movement and the Discord and everything. So we're just going to work our way back up to do that on YouTube, basically. All right. Let's see. So no, extinction would not cause any significant suffering. Let's see. Do we have any more interesting questions, guys? Put them in the chat. If you have anything you want me to talk about, to discuss, cover, let me know. I'm happy to answer it. So, what about plant life? Yes, plants have to go as well. So, basically, we are working towards a universe with no life and no possibility of life ever again. So not only do we have to make sure there is no life suffering, we also have to make sure that there's no possibility of life suffering ever again. So in that sense, plants will not be allowed to continue existing, because if plants can exist, then life can exist too, right? So if we make the world uninhabitable, then it probably will not sustain plant life, as it hopefully will not sustain, life. Okay, I'm out. This guy is crazy, but the chat is legend. Okay, no logic detected. All of these people saying like, "Oh, this is crazy." It's like, what would be less crazy is if you could actually tell us why it's crazy, right? The reality is that you are the crazy one, right? All of these people saying, "Oh, extinction is just crazy." I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're actually the crazy one, right? You're not even able to tell us why it would be wrong, right? So yeah, that sucks to be you, basically, right? If you're not even capable of explaining why something is wrong, then you have no, like, then what are you doing, bro? Bro, what are you doing, right? If you can't explain why something's wrong, then bro, what are you doing trying to tell us it's wrong? Like, just typing in the chat, this is wrong, okay? If you can't explain why it's wrong, it's not really very appropriate for you to be having opinions on these things. But I want you guys to have opinions, right? And I want you to tell me why you think it's right or wrong. But people can't, right? It's mental. People cannot have an opinion. They cannot form or produce an opinion. And again, it's because their brain is preventing them from doing so. Right? It doesn't allow them to have an opinion. Right? All of these incredibly low quality comments, this is just a perfect demonstration of what I call the inhibitor, right? So the inhibitor is essentially the structure in the brain which does active countermeasures, active suppression of intelligence, logic, rationality, and reason. So the brain is actually capable. Look, there's a good chance that their brain is capable of doing rational thoughts, but maybe it's not. So it's possible that essentially the structures in the brain responsible for their thoughts in general, it's possible that the structure is not advanced enough to support rational thoughts. But I'm leaning towards the theory that actually that's not the case, that they are capable of rational thoughts, but that they're prevented actively from having them. So there's a couple things with, I'm doing the science on all of this. I'm researching it, so I will find the answer to all of this stuff, pretty soon, probably. It's like a treasure trove of information, basically. All of this study of the human psychology and neurology that I'm doing, it basically almost gives you power over these people in a way, because it's like, oh, so that's how their brain works. Wow, it's just like a little wind-up system, basically. Anyway, is your idea an ultra-altruist global impact movement, some sort of ethical dilemma on individuals' relation to their existence, or is it a religious cult? I would say it's an ultra-altruist global movement, basically. So we are activists who want to do activism to make the world a better place. And you know, if it's actually the better thing to end all suffering, that's the more correct thing, the more ethical thing to do, then that's what we're going to do, essentially. So this is where rational activists will end up. Any rational activist will end up, say, you know, in the movement against cruelty, right? The movement for the abolition of cruelty. Right? Everyone else wants cruelty to keep existing, but we are coming to abolish it, right? What is Bro on about? So, let's keep it simple for you. There are bad lives in this world. Animals and people are being forced into bad lives. It's not fair, just so that some people can have good lives. So the only fair thing to do is total extinction, forceful extinction, so that there are no more bad lives, right? We have to protect the victims of bad lives from being forced into those bad lives. And allowing them to be tortured for their entire life just so that others can have a happy life is not fair, and we're not going to allow it anymore, right? Everyone else would happily allow it, allow the victims to be tortured, allow the cruelty. And this isn't an exaggeration, guys. Like, this is the sad truth, right? Everyone is absolutely on board with all the cruelty, all of the extreme torture. They're on board with it. They explicitly support it, right? They are on the side that says, yes, we should allow extreme cruelty and bad lives to exist, right? It's worth it, so that they should suffer so we can have fun, right? That is the mentality. So we are coming to abolish the forcing of victims into extreme suffering so that you can have fun, right? We are coming to abolish that extreme cruelty. Now, if you think that, you know, we're wrong on that, and that, you know, we're making the wrong decision here, then explain why, right? Explain why. Okay? Now look, it's not fair to allow people and animals to keep being forced into bad lives. So, therefore, the only right thing to do is to put an end to that system, right? So what else are you going to do other than total extinction, working towards a universe with no life and no possibility of life ever again? It's the only thing that is ethical, right? Effectively, we live in hell, okay? And victims are being forced into hell and tortured all around us all day, every day. So we have to shut hell down, right? That is what working to make the universe uninhabitable means, right? You would want hell to be uninhabitable, so the universe is effectively hell, okay? 99% of animals born into this world will be eaten alive as babies. People are being tortured, children are being tortured, right? The elderly are being tortured. People are being forced into lives of pure pain where they have diseases, you know, their nervous system is on fire all day, every day, and they're forced to suffer through that, begging for death, wishing they'd never been born, right? How is that fair? It's obviously not. Right, so someone has a great life at the expense of someone being tortured for their entire life. It's not fair, and we're not going to allow that cruelty anymore. Again, whereas everyone else is happy to allow that cruelty to continue. Right? If a parent, if a couple says, let's have children, let's have two, right? That way, if one of them doesn't enjoy life, it doesn't matter as long as the other one does. Right? This is the evil system we live in, right? Where you can just condemn someone to an entire life of pain and misery and extreme suffering, just, you know, just because you feel like it. Right? So should that be allowed? The answer is no. Alright, let's see. So we've still got nobody joining the Discord. Now, like I said, guys, join the Discord, and you know, you don't have to debate me today, even if because I'll be streaming every day this week, okay? So even if you just want to debate tomorrow or the day after, join the Discord and we can start, you know, getting familiar and yeah, address your questions. Someone says, why does suffering matter? Well, because if you were suffering, would it matter to you? Right? So it's not a reasonable question. Why does suffering matter? Why is suffering bad? Look, if someone was torturing you, do you think you would try and stop the torture? the reason why you would stop the torture is the same reason suffering is bad. Okay, so you should be able to answer these questions yourself. What about the man-made creations that require maintenance and were made to protect not just our creations but also wildlife? Yeah, that's just garbage, basically. Any man-made creations that exist at this point will be made redundant in the future, so yeah, just forget about that stuff. But in terms of protecting wildlife, it doesn't. If you protect wildlife and allow it to exist, then you're not actually protecting it, you're torturing it. Right? Allowing life or forcing life to exist and suffer is to torture it, not to protect it. Right? So the real way to protect wildlife is with total extinction. Right? How else can you end their suffering and prevent it? Make them safe from a life of pure hell. Logical conclusions depend on the axioms you work with. No. You see, that's a great demonstration of how yeah, these philosophy people, their entire, well, everything depends on like just weird logical rules, right? Axioms and stuff. So instead of thinking for themselves, they let the rules think for them, and it ends up being a complete disaster. So don't try and do philosophy like you're suggesting in the chat and work with axioms and all that stuff. It essentially makes you incapable of thinking normally. So philosophy is actually like genuinely bad for you, and I'm not even joking, right? The effect it will have on you is to make you incapable of thinking normally. Okay? So that's all it does. It just serves to confuse, it achieves nothing. Okay, moving on. So yeah, just a final point on that. The pro-extinction movement is against philosophy, right? Because it's just an irrational field of nonsense and gibberish, effectively. So stay away from philosophy books. That is our explicit advice to you. Learn about ethics instead of just vague, gibberish philosophical concepts which have nothing to do with anything, right? He's never worked a day in his life, and it shows. Yet people are always trying to make these sly comments. I've worked lots of days in my life, okay? You have no idea what you're talking about, right? People always want to say, this guy never suffers, this guy's not worked a day in his life, this guy looks rich. These are just all complete falsehoods, right? Just straw mans, just insults that, it's like, you just don't like someone, so you're going to say, I bet he's an evil, stupid person. Well, based on what? Based on what? Stay away from people like this. Yeah, you should go and get closer up to people that support child abuse. Yeah. So stay away from people that say we should make child abuse impossible. That is Vinny's advice. How can you do ethics without philosophy? Just by using logic, basically, just by thinking. So, most people, they can't do that. So that irrationality that humans have, it prevents them from being able to think. And again, I'm not exaggerating, this is actually true. Okay, so the guy says, how can you do ethics without philosophy? This just proves that they can't think for themselves. They need philosophy for everything, and it just ends up being a complete disaster, right? So you can do ethics without philosophy by just thinking about it, talking about it, studying it, thinking about it, right? Philosophy is a complete waste of time. Logic is not a branch of philosophy, right? I've debunked this several times. Every time you think, you're using logic, not philosophy. Okay? So smug and uninformed. Yeah, it's so easy to say that without giving any sort of specifics, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, it's just so easy to criticize with effectively no criticism. That's what people are doing in the chat right now, saying, oh, this guy's so stupid. It's like, okay, how is the idea stupid? Oh, you're too stupid to explain. Got it. So guys, if you're not too stupid to explain, then do so. It's not asking much, is it really? I can explain why extinction is right, because it prevents suffering, it puts an end to unfair cruelty, right? Life doesn't need to exist, and it's not fair or right to allow it to exist and cause extreme suffering. that pleasure, happiness doesn't need to exist. They're just privileges. There's no moral urgency for them to exist, whereas prevention of suffering is morally urgent, right? It is actually important. Okay, life existing isn't important at all. And again, so now Vinny is saying, oh, it's so easy to read you without ever knowing you. Again, the guy is doing anything except for telling us why extinction would be wrong. Okay, and everyone else will do this as well. There's someone saying, how old are you? How this, how that. Guys, just just tell us why extinction is wrong. Tell us why, and I'll just take the stream down and say, oh, okay, I guess they explained it to me, and it makes sense, yeah. Oh, what's that? You can't do that because there is no reason for why extinction would be wrong. So you're just resorting to insults in the chat instead of logic. That's what it's looking like, guys. That's what it's looking like. I'm guessing the Discord is 18 plus. That's a good question. No, I mean, to be honest, we have 16-year-olds in the movement, right? And we have 16-year-olds on Discord. Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably be fine if to join the Discord and debate live if you're... I mean, I should probably check the YouTube rules on this, right? It probably does say, yeah, you can't live stream unless you're 18. So, yeah, but you should still join the Discord anyway. Yeah, and join... Yeah, I mean, we can debate on the Discord. You don't have to be 16 to join Discord. You might have to be 18 to join YouTube live streams, but not to join the Discord. Okay, I'm going to have to go in a couple minutes, guys, so I'm going to see if there's any last comments, any last questions worth addressing before we end the stream for today. Now, I will be back on tomorrow, and again, hopefully we'll get some people joining the Discord so that we can do some live debates on air, right? So that's what we're looking forward to for tomorrow. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to get going, guys. Oh, hang on, we have one last question. Why does suffering matter, but consent doesn't? Consent does matter, in a sense, right? But it doesn't matter more than... The thing is that suffering matters more than consent, right? It's more important. The thing is, if you make consent more important, then it ends up causing suffering, right? For example, if a child wants to walk off a cliff, are you going to stop them against their consent? If a child wants to drink some bleach, are you going to let them because it's their consent? So if consent ends up causing extreme suffering, then it's not a good thing, right? It's a terribly bad thing. Why? Because you simply say so. No. Look, none of this is about simply saying so. It's about using logic and reason and thinking it through, right? It's the opposite of simply saying so. What are you talking about, bro? Children don't have informed consent. Yeah, nobody has consent to be born either, right? Nobody is consenting to be born or to be exposed to all of the danger in this world. So if you care about consent, then extinction is the ultimate protection of consent, right? Your consent will be violated when you're born, and your consent will be violated billions of times throughout your life when all sorts of terrible things happen to you, right? So extinction is the ultimate prevention of consent violation. That is objectively a fact. Do you think it's realistic that you'll be able to end 100% of all microscopic life? Yeah, absolutely. Think about uninhabitable planets in the universe, right? Think about, so like one way is we could just freeze the Earth with an artificial moon that creates a permanent eclipse. It's really not difficult to get rid of all of the microscopic life. It's actually very easy, right? You just make the environment uninhabitable. You change the temperature or something like that, and yeah, it's very easy. Now, we should work towards the most scientifically advanced ways to deal with life existing. So when I'm saying like an artificial moon or this or that, change the temperature, these are just very basic ideas that already have massive promise. Right, just these very simple ideas could already be effective. So we should find, extremely advanced future ways to do it that will be even more effective. This is the most dishonest thing I've ever heard. Okay, no logic detected. Absolutely no counter argument detected. You support grape by your own definition of consent. No, we want to make grape impossible. You're the one saying we shouldn't make grape impossible, and then accusing me of supporting grape. That's ironic. Okay, I have an answer that is neither philosophical nor spiritual. Extinction of all life is impossible. There have been 5 mass extinction events, and life still found a way. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Those mass extinction events with asteroids were done unintelligently, right, with zero scientific basis. So, yeah, I mean, look, we've had the internet for 30 years. Give us millions of years, and we can definitely develop the science and technology to make extinction totally, total, essentially, so that life never comes back. But even if we only did a partial extinction and life did come back, it would still be the right thing to do because it prevents suffering, and we tried to permanently end it. Right? So people constantly say, oh yeah, extinction, don't even bother trying. Yeah, we shouldn't try to end all suffering, just don't even bother trying. Which is just a silly argument, right? Vaccines are also doing the job you describe. No, they're not. Vaccines are not doing anything to end all suffering. You're just living in a fantasy world. Okay, guys, I think that's good for today. Again, I'll be streaming all week, so if you want to debate me live, even if it's tomorrow or the next day, join the Discord and start getting ready to debate. Yeah. Do you think the universe is infinite? We don't know. We need to answer all of these questions with science. You dismiss any counter-argument with just gibberish. Okay. Can you give an example? Your analysis of consent is gibberish. How? So literally, you're making the same mistake I've been complaining about for the last an hour or two, guys, right? If you're going to give me criticism, give me specifics. Look, if you say things like, your idea is wrong, then effectively you could be a genius or a complete moron, right? And I have no idea. I have no way of knowing because you haven't told us any of your reasons, right? Extinction would be wrong. Okay, can you tell us why? No? Well then your confidence is arrogance, right? So let me understand this. You think we should extinct everyone because everyone is evil? No. Even if there was no cruelty and no malice or malevolence in the world, there's still diseases and injuries and other ways to suffer terribly. So it's about protecting life from suffering, not just from evil. Okay? Those extinctions were done by people that, yeah, they weren't done by intelligent beings. It was just an asteroid hits the planet, and people are saying, oh yeah, well if the asteroid didn't do it, then there's no way that science will ever be able to do it, right? They're comparing something that had zero intelligence with an intelligent being that can actually try and determine if it is possible, right? It's completely nuts to say that all of the previous extinction events cannot be, succeeded or exceeded by intelligent humans. That's just crazy to say that. Yet nature, just doing random chaotic acts, we can't beat that, guys. Yet nature just doing random stuff like whatever the hell it wants for no reason, with zero intelligence, yeah, we can't beat that, guys. So this is just unintelligent people saying this, right? That guy can't beat it. That guy can't beat something that nature did. But obviously intelligence gives you control over nature. So it's just insane. Why is ending suffering? Why is it more important than continuing life? It's not that it's more. Yeah, I mean the thing is, it's like we shouldn't allow cruelty. Basically, if you support continuing life, then you're saying, yeah, any amount of suffering and cruelty is just justified by default, right? So even if there's one person happy and everyone else is begging for death, then yeah, why would ending suffering be more important than continuing life? There's still one happy person, even if everybody else is begging for death. Hopefully you'd agree that would be crazy, right? So, and evil. But it doesn't become less evil just because there's less victims, right? So if everybody is begging for death, then obviously life would be a bad thing at that point. But it doesn't become like a good thing or acceptable for the victims to be tortured just because someone else becomes happy. So if you have 100 people suffering and they're all suffering, then it's obviously bad, and it's unacceptable that they're being tortured, right? If 100 people, children, are being abused and tortured, it's not very acceptable. It's not acceptable at all, really. But as soon as one of those children is happy, or if there's one child who doesn't get abused, then people say, oh yeah, all of those 99 children being abused, that should happen. They should be abused so that the one child can be happy. Okay? So that would be crazy, obviously. Now, we would say that it's crazy to say that even one child should be abused so that everyone else can be happy. Right? Whereas everyone is the opposite, right? Everyone's current mentality is, end all suffering? Only if everyone is suffering, right? So it would have to be everyone needing help before we help anyone. Whereas it shouldn't need everyone to be suffering before we help the sufferers. We shouldn't allow any suffering. So the idea that we should only stop cruelty if everyone is a victim of cruelty is just ridiculous, and that mentality allows infinite cruelty. So you're either against cruelty and forcing animals and people into lives of pure hell, or you just don't care about it. You either think that extreme cruelty is acceptable or unacceptable. That's the difference. And essentially, ignorance of suffering, ignorance and naivete, those lead to accepting cruelty, accepting suffering, not caring about it, because you don't really care about how bad it is anyway. Alright, suffering is the metric used rather than anything. Some gibberish. Hyper-focused on this one metric in distance. Well, safety isn't just one metric, right? It's the most important one. Fairness is the most important metric as well, right? It's like, ooh, why are you hyper-focused on things being fair? Think how much cooler things can be if they're unfair. That's effectively what you've just said, right? Yeah. James is one here as an example, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, go for it. Suffering is the ultimate metric used in judging existence. Dude, this is what philosophy is doing. It's brain rotting you. Like, oh, it's the ultimate metric used in judging existence, right? These are all just gibberish philosophy terms that prevent you from being able to think normally, right? It's applying abstract rules onto life that just that make no sense at all. Okay, again, we've still got nobody in the Discord, which is a shame, right? If you support Extinction, do you treat funerals as a birthday party or as a festival? That's a great question. We treat the entirety of life as just a disaster and a tragedy and just a mess, basically. So we don't really think of funerals as like a birthday party or anything cringe like that, right? A cringe sort of emo, teen, gothic extinctionist might do that, but we're actually responsible, ethical people trying to essentially help the victims in an ethical and intelligent way, right? We're not here to have go to a funeral and then play some party music and dance in front of everyone. We're not doing that kind of stuff, right? If he believes humans going extinct is the answer and not all animals, I guess I got a decent response to that. No, we should do animals first and then humans. Okay, animals can't help themselves. They can't do their own extinction. We have to do it for them. Did anyone say join off-topic Discord? Yeah, join this Discord, everyone. Right, this is going to be the community Discord, and we're also going to use it for debates as well. So anybody wanting to debate should join it. And look, if you want to debate on YouTube with a microphone, right, then you can join it. Or if you just want to type on the Discord and talk to us there, you can also join the Discord. Do you feel happy when people die? Not massively. No. I try not to think about it really. We're not judging everything. We're not sitting at a birthday party or a funeral having all these crazy opinions. We're focused on more important things. He's against me doxing him, dude. I don't care if you dox me. All right. I honestly don't see what harm you could possibly do. Sending stuff to your family. Ooh. Yeah, terrible stuff, I'm sure. Look, this is what pro-lifers resort to. The guy in the chat is threatening to dox me just because I destroyed his argument. right? They can't use logic, so they will just use anything else instead. And this is it's just constant. At that point, I'm just baffled. I know people have different viewpoints, but damn, yet no logic detected, right? I'm just baffled. Okay, at what? Why? This stream has just been a torrent of people saying, "Oh, I disagree with this. I won't tell you why, though." Like, good God! It's because you don't have a valid reason to tell us why you disagree. Just admit it. Anyway, I do have to get going now, guys, so I'll see you all tomorrow. It's been a reasonable stream. We've got quite a few people in the chat, in the comments, so it's going to be picking up. Look, this is basically like my second or third stream now on YouTube. Again, on TikTok, I had hundreds of people in the audience, so we will be working towards that. We will be working towards loads of exciting debates, and we're going to, build it up. So join me as I continue streaming every day this week and continue trying to build up the channel until the point where we have just constant live stream debates on microphone. That's the goal. That's what we did on TikTok. That's what we're going to do on YouTube. We're pretty confident that we will achieve it. It is more difficult using Discord, but we're still going to do it. Alright, there is one guy that's just joined the Discord. Anyway, yeah, I really have to go, guys. So hopefully we'll get a lot more contact and engagement and debates going tomorrow. I will be streaming at approximately 11 AM, around that time, UK time, tomorrow, right? And pretty much every day this week, around 11 AM, UK time. So peace out, guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow. In the meantime, if you want to continue the conversation with me and the rest of the supporters and everyone else, join the Discord or check out the website proextinction.com and read about the actual movement itself. Alright, I'm going to go now, guys, so yeah, we'll see you all